According to the gas chromatograph, the secret ingredient is love. Who's been screwing with this thing? Welcome to the Unrealistic Elephant Podcast.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Unrealistic Elephant Podcast. My name is Nathan.
And I am Ian.
And it's been another month, another 30 days. And we have watched 2 more movies. But before we get into that, I have a bone to pick with you, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, I follow you on Letterboxd. I know you watched End of Evangelion, and I know you gave it 2.5 stars.
Oh, yeah, I did. I would give the same thing to the show, to be fair.
Oh, I guess, but like, there's so I don't want to get into this because I could talk for way too long about End of Evangelion, but know that is coming, okay, and we will have a fight on air over this.
Okay.
Because,
I mean, I'm not too,
we don't usually fight.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not too confrontational. It'll be the most chill fight ever because we don't usually debate things very much. Siskel and Ebert, we are not.
Yeah. The thing is, I was going through like a bunch of the Letterboxd top 250, which I've haven't seen yet, just because I've seen like 63% of them right now. And
oh wow.
Yeah, End of Evangelion was on there. I was like, okay, I better just watch this anyway because it was, I've seen the show. And I watched it, I was like, okay, it was fine. But then I found out that there's another Evangelion movie on there, and I guess that's the 4th movie in a series of, like, rebirth movies or something, so I guess I have a lot more Evangelion to watch.
Yeah, that's the only one that I haven't finished, actually. So maybe I can recommend that once you've got to the 4th one. That would be great.
Okay. Yeah, some of those Letterboxd things are, like, kind of, like... Because they have one that's, like, a movie that's based off of the melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya, or I don't know how you even say that.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, I guess I have to watch the show before I watch that movie to get the context of what it means and everything, which I've heard that's a good show, so I don't know. I'm not saying I'm, like, dreading it.
I've seen a little bit of it. I don't know a whole lot about it. I really should go back and finish it. But, definitely recommend it as well. But yeah, I'm glad you finally watched End of Eva. I don't want to talk about it right now because I definitely want to talk about it on the show. But you just know, I know you watched it, and I know that we've both watched it now. It's coming.
Yeah, my review in just a short summary is needed more Misato.
You know what? I totally agree with you. That's the thing, is we won't fight because I can totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Anyway.
Well, I think what we should do is we should start with my recommendation because I don't want to end this on a sour note. So why don't we start with the movie I recommended last? Now, I'm a bit of a goof. I'm a bit of a joker, and I like to.
The People's Joker. Have you heard of that movie that's coming out?
No. What is that?
Oh, it's a movie. I think it has Tim Heidecker in it, or he produced it or something. But I think it's like a LGBTQ comedy thing. I don't really know. I've just seen a few clips of it.
Okay, I'll look that up.
I think it was someone who worked on cinema too, who directed it and everything. So
okay, yeah, no, sure, watch that. Oh my god,
talk about on cinema every single episode of this freaking podcast.
I was about to say you're like the biggest on cinema fan in the entire world, I'd say.
I don't know if that's true. There are some pretty dedicated ones who I talk to, but I like it a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. So as I was saying, I like to play pranks. I like to play jokes, and I thought, man, this movie that Ian hated in high school might be a funny movie to recommend because why not? I watched it.
Did you watch this before or after the Love Exposure, first of all?
I actually watched this before. I got it out of the way first because I watched Love Exposure over the course of like a couple of days,
Yeah, I figured
which
you
we'll get
probably would
into.
have.
Yeah.
So did I actually,
Um.
but I'll get into that too.
Yeah. Before we get into Apollo 18, um, what are your thoughts on the whole found footage genre as a whole? Because it was like a really big thing back when this movie came out in like 2011. I can't remember when Paranormal Activity came out, but that's the one that sort of, I guess Blair Witch Project was the
I
first.
believe that was 2008, 2009, I think.
Yeah, so around that, yeah, around that same period of time. Uh,
Well, the
so
first, like, I
what?
guess, found footage movie that. Well, this wasn't entirely a found footage movie, but there was certain
Yeah,
scenes in Cannibal Holocaust where they were, like, looking at footage that somebody found in the woods. And that was kind of like
right.
the first kind of well known found footage movie. But then it really got popularity with the Blair Witch Project. But I don't think it really became a
Hmm.
trend until Paranormal Activity. I mean, there was a few movies before Paranormal Activity and after Blair Witch that did that, but I think Paranormal Activity was the one where it really showed a lot of people coming out with this like concept and everything. And one of them was Apollo 18, and it's basically Blair Witch in space.
Yeah, it's basically Blair Witch in space, and like that's the thing is I don't hate found footage movies. I think that it was very popular back in the day to shit on this concept because it was very everyone was doing it. There was a bunch of found footage movies coming out. There's off the top of my head there's like The Last Exorcism came out around that time.
Oh, is that a found
The
footage? I
Devil
didn't even see
Inside.
that.
Yeah, that
I didn't even see
apparently
that
that one's
either.
pretty divisive. There and yeah, the Paranormal Activity got has like I think 7 sequels at this point, and
I didn't even know they came out with the
it was
last one. I watched the Ghost Dimension and I was like, this is horrible. And then I heard they made
yeah.
another one a couple years later. It's like, no, I done. I
No,
filled my purpose. I watched all of the Paranormal Activity movies in my mind.
yeah, exactly. The last one I watched was the fourth one, and that one was just okay, and that's as far as I went. I don't hate the concept of a horror movie on the moon. Like there's like a sci-fi element you could go, but this is more going like cosmic, or not cosmic, going like classic astronauts. Like this takes place in the 70s, I want to say, right?
Yep, it took place 2 years after Apollo 17, supposedly. So it's in
Yeah, yeah,
74.
yeah, 74. So, um, it's an interesting take on it. So the movie itself is supposedly edited together from footage found on lunartruth.org, and which me and Avery had a big laugh whenever that happened because that just
Okay.
sounds like some sort of weird right wing like conspiracy website that gets
that's
like
that's the thing
three
is like
viewers a day.
when I saw that, like the lunartruth.org or whatever, I forget if it was .org or .com, but anyway, this movie is so much better if you just look at it and you think that it's like somebody who trolled a bunch of conspiracy theorists by putting this up online. And if you
Oh
look at
my
it from
god.
that angle, it's actually kind of brilliant. But I don't think that's what they
Yeah,
were going for.
it's yeah. I think they're going for seriously spooky, which there was like a couple of moments where it was spooky, but it was never like scary. You know what I mean? It was always like okay. So firstly, the we follow three people. We follow the two guys in the basically how going to the moon works is you got two guys on the in the lunar module who are on the moon, and then one guy in orbit. And the one guy in orbit for this movie does fucking nothing, and you forget he's there for most of the time. And then there's two other guys, and all of these guys look like the same guy, and I would always get them mixed up. And I didn't. And they were all the problem with all the characters in this movie, I would say, is they're all the same guy.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Like,
characters. Like, what
yeah,
characterization do they have other than I have a wife and kids at home?
legit, everyone is just like, I want to go see my wife and kids at home, and then you go look at the other guy, he's like, I want to go see my wife and kids at home, but I'm crazy,
Yeah.
or like, okay, you told me about the twist of this movie whenever you saw it originally in high school, and I thought that was stupid, but like not like an impossible thing to make scary. Like stupid things can be really scary.
Oh yeah,
Like
human stupidity is
it's
some of like the scariest shit you'll ever see.
yeah, exactly. So basically the premise of the movie is these guys go up on the moon. They're sent to the moon by the U.S. Government. It's a hush hush, undercover top secret mission to the moon, which I guess is a little weird. How do you have a top secret mission to the
Yeah, I
moon?
was gonna say,
Isn't
like,
it pretty hard to?
how do you fake like a rocket going up into the stratosphere and just be like nobody in the entire world has notices that with satellites and shit, or even just seeing
Yeah,
it?
like apparently it's really easy because they when they go up to the moon, they find a Russian lunar module that they didn't even know. Like it's in space. Like there's satellites and stuff. I know it's like the 70s, but I know that they had stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, so
Yeah,
why?
I'm glad that you picked up on that because I wasn't sure if that was just a me thing. It's like, how the fuck are they getting this rocket up into space? But I mean, that was like, there's more on, there's more things that I have questions about other than that. But that was the first big one.
Yes, exactly. Um, but yeah, once they get to the moon, it's all hunky dory. They're having a great time. They put the flag on the moon. They take pictures for their kids, which they can never show them because it's a top secret mission. So, but then some weird stuff starts to happen. Like their comms start messing up. They get like I think it's really funny how quickly this descends because like first night that they're on the moon, they set up all these like modules all over the moon to monitor things, and they go to bed, and then there's like knocking against the shuttle, which like at that point you it's not like, oh, it's probably just the wind because there's no wind, and it's not the trees outside because there's no trees. It's probably an alien or something else like that.
Yeah.
Like what else could you possibly believe that is? And but they're like, oh, it's probably just, probably just no, probably don't have to worry about it. And it's like these horror movie tropes don't really work like that
Yeah.
when you have a situation where there is no shadow of a doubt that there can't be anyone else up here other than something trying to get you.
Yeah. Honestly, it's just like, it's like fucking Duck Dodgers like fighting Marvin the Martian. Like that's what that kind of shit reminds me of. Just like a Looney Tunes skit. It's just like, where's the kaboom? Like that type of shit. Like where it's just like, oh, there's a Martian at the door. Come back later.
Ugh, whatever. So within the second day, shit has already hit the fan. It's like they it's so hard for me to like normally whenever we talk about these movies, I'd like to go through and talk about scenes that are memorable and scenes that I like. And there's a couple in this movie. There's a scene where they're spacewalking and they find this really dark crater, like impossibly dark because they're on the moon. And they find a Russian cosmonaut, and they're like, the way it's presented is they're taking these like flash. It's almost like a camera flash, but I don't know why they don't just have a regular flashlight in that scene. It's like a flashing flashlight that only lights up for a second. And you're sort of, it's like a flash and you don't see anything, a flash, you don't see anything, and it does that for a really long time. And then there's a pretty good jump scare with like a decayed dead Russian cosmonaut. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty good. But other than that scene, I'm struggling because every scene is just the moon, right? Like there's no scene variety. There's no, like, it's either you're on the moon or you're in the space, like the lunar module.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like there's no variety. There's nothing to spice anything up. It's just so boring to look at. You said at the end of the last episode that this movie was boring. Yeah. And I was like, it can't be that boring. You were probably right. It really is that boring.
Yeah, because like it's not even just the locations. It's also just the fact that, there's the tone of the movie is pretty much just all the same. It's just either they're talking about boring stuff like, oh, I miss my wife, or there's like, I miss video games, I miss my mom, like that type of stuff. But
yeah,
like, or it's that, or it's just like dumb jump scares and stuff like that. And I agree, like I'm not like this I guess found footage trend, it can be done well. I've seen a lot of movies that I do really like that are in the found footage trend. I mean, I like Wreck and Wreck 2 a lot,
Yes,
especially the
I
first
was
one.
gonna bring up Wreck. I was
Yeah,
gonna bring up Wreck because that's like one of my favorite horror movies ever. Just the way that it's presented, that is the way to do it.
yeah.
Um,
And
this is not.
yeah, exactly. There was a Japanese movie called Narai the Curse, which was pretty good. It was kind of set up like a documentary, and it didn't have shaky
Oh
cam.
yeah,
And this isn't a horror movie, but Chronicle I also thought was really good. Um,
yeah,
so like, and that was like something where there was kind of like an intergalactic kind of theme to it. So I mean, if Chronicle was more of a horror movie or something like that, maybe you'd get something kind of like Apollo 18, except good and with superpowers. As I'm
yeah,
because like the concept of Apollo 18 is like, I mean, it's not a new concept, which is why there's like literally a They Might Be Giants album called Apollo 18 because They Might Be Giants came up with it first. But the whole idea of like, oh, there's this missing 18th Apollo mission that we never got a chance to see. That's not a new thing, but with and neither is the idea of doing like the found footage genre, especially around this time. So the reason that I walked out of this movie originally back when I saw it in high school is just like, first of all, I was way too close to the screen, so it was just like sensory
yeah,
overload when something actually did happen, the few times that it did happen. But yeah, this was so insufferable to sit through. And when I watched like the last 30 minutes of it later on Netflix, I was like, okay, yeah, the tone didn't change. The ending makes no sense. I mean, what's implied from the ending doesn't make any sense, I should say. And yeah, this is a nothing movie. This is just a movie that's like, it's not bad in a way that's worth talking about or anything. Like, to give you, I guess, a little bit of context, for this podcast, I wrote 18 pages of notes. Only 3 of those pages are about Apollo 18 because I have nothing to say about this movie. It speaks for itself. It's a nothing movie that, is just going to fall by and be forgotten over time. So,
yeah, and that's exactly what happened. I don't hear anyone talk about this movie anymore. Um, like what really blew me away is how little they tried. Like, because they could have put in some effort here, but like all of the camera footage, every single shot in this movie is shot on these old, I guess, is supposed to be shot on these old 1970s
yeah, it's
camcorders
so
that they
inauthentic
sent up to
though.
the moon.
Because like
Yeah,
it looks like Instagram filters. Like, I'm not even kidding.
yeah, that is exactly what Avery said when we were watching it. Is it looks like an Instagram or a Snapchat filter of just a film grain that they put over it, and it's so incredibly cheap. All the shots when they're on the moon just look like shots of people walking around normally, while like that's just slowed down to make it look like it's anti-gravity. Like there could be some sort of cool scene involving the low gravity on the moon. There could be something, but it was just a movie that was on the moon. Nothing really happened. Like that's the thing, is most of the scares in this movie don't take place on the moon, like the surface of the moon. Most of them takes place inside this lunar module where everything is normal. It's just sort of like, it's like a little room, and you see most of it through like security cameras and stuff, like Paranormal Activity, which is, again, they're really just
Well,
banking on the
Paranormal
fact.
Activity 2 was like that, not the first one.
Oh, fair, yeah, but like still, they're it makes me sad because I really think that this concept isn't bad. I just feel like it was given to somebody who didn't really know what they were doing and was just trying to like cash in. That's what it really feels like. It feels like a cash in for a trend that was popular for like a short amount of time.
Yeah, that's exactly what I felt about it too. And it's like, there's just so much. I don't want to say like this is a super original concept, but this could have been a good movie. Like, there's absolutely something here that you could have done with this and made into a better, or even just a more noteworthy bad movie. This is just like a
Yeah,
like, this. Some of the worst movies, in my opinions, are the ones that just don't have anything that you even want to talk about, be it good or bad. Like, it's like this is a nothing movie. It's a nothing burger of a movie, as a fucking SS Sniper Wolf would say. But
yeah,
But with like, yeah, like going back to like like the '70s thing and like the Instagram filter vibe to it. Like I understand this movie has a limited budget. It was like 5 million, I think, because these found footage movies were really cheap to make. That's why they made a bunch of them.
Yeah, exactly. That's why it took off so badly.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know, like why is this even set in the '70s? Like why? Like there's no reason Apollo 18 couldn't have happened years later. Like they were just trying to, and like
Yeah,
every single thing that like happened in this, you know, every time they tried to reference something in the '70s, it just came off as so forced. It's like this is the time period or something. Like there's like one time where a character's like, "Oh, don't start talking to me about Watergate. I don't want to hear about that." Like it's the most
yeah, like
forced like dialogue and references that you could ever use just to be like, "Hey, I'm a period piece." And it was a very lazy
it, it
period piece.
it almost feels like they said it in the 70s to get extra dialogue out of them where they could be like, oh, the 70s, and oh, we got the listen to this licensed music on my Walkman, or like, I don't get it. Like, you could have set this in 2011, the year that it came out. Here's my concept. You talk to these modern astronauts like, oh, remember Apollo 17? We are bringing back the Apollo program. We're doing Apollo 18. We're going back to the moon. Yes, I would love that. When I was a kid, my dad was an astronaut, and I want to, like, even you could develop characters past like, I am an astronaut and I love my family.
Yeah.
Like, you could have a character who was on the Apollo 17 missions. You could have a character who, like, there was so many other options than, they're the same guy too. Like, I remember looking at their picture. There's a lot of pictures of them all together. Like, remember the heroes that went to the moon, Apollo 18, and it's like just the same dude copy pasted 3 times.
Yeah.
Like, I can't, you can't relate to these characters, and that was a big problem with a lot of these movies. Is it was very much the style over substance, and they were like, we have this cool effect, this cool gimmick, we don't really need, character can just fall by the wayside. Like, Cloverfield, if you remember that movie, the marketing and the gimmick of the whole thing was all very good, but I couldn't tell you about the characters that were in Cloverfield. Like, I haven't seen Cloverfield in a long time. I can't imagine that the characters are too strong, considering J.J. Abrams just went forth and found this new great thing that he can market with. And
Actually, was
that's
Cloverfield
really what this
before or
feels
after
like.
Paranormal Activity? Now that I think about it,
I don't know, actually.
because it might have been, yeah, it might have been Cloverfield that started off that trend. If it was, I'm not sure off the top
I
of my head.
Well, that's the thing, is even Cloverfield had like its own like marketing thing. Like, it had 2000, oh yeah, 2008 is when Cloverfield came out.
Okay, and Paranormal Activity was when?
Yeah.
2000.
Paranormal Activity, paranormal, googling on the show, looking up the things. 2007, so it was Paranormal
Oh,
Activity.
okay, fair enough.
Yeah, yeah. But like, I I'm really struggling to talk about this movie more than any movie we've talked about before, just because there's nothing. I don't even feel like giving this movie a full hour. Like,
Yeah, because
what could you possibly talk about?
the thing
Like,
is, for me, like we watched this movie. This movie was 86 minutes. Love Exposure was 4 hours. This felt way longer than Love Exposure for me. This was just a
yes.
slog.
No, for real. And that's the problem. Is you said the worst movies are movies that are just boring and have nothing to even say with the movie that they're making. It's literally just a movie to be a movie.
Yeah, it's
And
like
that's what this feels like. I even the worst movies, like, I like, after we recorded our last episode, I watched Freddy Got Fingered for the first time since high school. And that movie is, I would not say an enjoyable movie, but it is doing something more interesting than Apollo 18, and because of that, I would rate this way higher than Apollo 18.
oh, I would
Like,
too.
it's like, it has something to say about why it's doing what it's doing.
Yeah, exactly. And like, you could have had that in Apollo 18 too. And, but this is just like, they had an idea, I guess, which was go to the moon and do paranormal activity. But that's all the idea was. It never evolved beyond that. This was just it just, that and like other, sci-fi horrors like Alien, I guess, that you can also compare this unfavorably to those. But yeah, like I would just say, if you want a better experience than Apollo 18, just watch Alien and shake your TV a bunch, and then you'll pretty much just get that.
Watch Alien, and yeah, just it's watch Alien, shake your TV, and put it down to like 12 frames per second, so you can't understand that's sorry. Every time I remember something else I don't like, I get all excited because at least it's something that's not nothing. Like, they had all these shots it was almost filmed less like a found footage and more like a ghost show, like Ghost Adventures or something. Like every time something would move in the background, the movie would stop and be like, "Wait, did you see that?" And then zoom in real close and
Actually,
play
that's
it
a good
again.
analogy now that you say that out loud. I didn't think about that, but that's actually exactly what this
Yeah,
is.
I guess we should. But before we tank this movie, we should probably explain. The big twist is that the moon rocks are evil and they're aliens. It, which is
I mean, I didn't see it coming.
trying to I didn't, but like that lead, but all that does is lead to a bunch of scenes where they they show they're just showing astronauts walking around the moon and they go, "Wait, did you see that?" And it zooms in on a hill and a rock falls over on its own and it's like, "Ooh, scary." And it's like, "No, not ooh, scary. I don't even know what the fuck I'm looking at because you put a 1970s film grain filter over it, so I can't even tell what I'm looking at." Most of the time, these action scenes with heavy air quotes, are just like completely incomprehensible because they're trying to make it look like an old camera, but they aren't like taking into account that you need to be able to see something. You can't just be like, "Oh, it's because it was an old camera. It didn't look as good." So you have to, "What do you think you saw?" Like you need to actually show me something that is worth seeing to for me to appreciate any part of this movie.
Yeah.
The moon rocks are evil, and one of the guys, I am going to throw a Hail Mary for what his name was. His name was John Chris.
There was one character named Nathan, so I mean, was it
It
Nathan?
was Nathan.
Okay.
It was Nathan. It was, yes. It was the guy. I couldn't even remember his name, and it was my name.
That's quite the accomplishment, Apollo 18. Good job.
Yeah, for real. Like, and yeah, he gets attacked. A moon rock gets into his suit somehow. They never really explain how. I guess the moon rock like crawled into his suit while they were sleeping. Maybe that's the best thing I could think of, because they brought moon rocks onto the lander.
Yeah.
But anyway, it crawls and like bites him and digs into him into like his chest, and he like gets infected with like zombie virus, and eventually they're running out of oxygen, and if we learn that the government sent them up there and they didn't expect to bring them back. They sent them up there on a suicide mission, which my biggest question was, why are we doing this? If you don't plan on bringing anyone back, why did you set up a bunch of cameras that need to have the film brought back?
Yeah, and
Why
that's the
did
thing.
you
Like, how did the people get this on lunartruth.org? Like, how did they get this footage? That was the thing that I kept
actually?
wondering at the end. It's just like, okay, did somebody, like, was Apollo 19 a thing in this universe? And that's how they got the footage?
Well, let me tell you, I watched this movie on Prime. I don't know where you watched it, but I watched it on Amazon Prime. And in the description of Amazon Prime, it tells you that they give you a first and last name of a Russian astronaut who apparently found this footage and uploaded it to lunartruth.org.
Did he
They
edit
they
it
don't
too? because this
I,
movie's
I,
like completely the editing in this movie is fucking horrible. I was just like, whenever I was
yes,
watching it,
like
I was just like, okay, did the people who found this footage also edit it really horribly, or was this the way that they found the footage? Did like the Moon Rocks edit the
it
footage?
was the Moon Rocks edited the footage. They're just,
Yeah.
it's pretty good for a Moon Rock, pretty bad for a Russian guy. But yeah, like, why did this Russian guy, by the way, is not in the film? He's never mentioned. I brushed through it, but he's in the Amazon Prime video description.
Okay.
I don't know how this happened, but anyway, Nathan Nate gets called into the crater, the dark crater, and he runs down there, and the first big, again, major air quotes, scary scene happens where Ben, the other guy, goes down and he sees all the moon rocks start moving and crawling towards him, and at this point I realized why they have this flashing like flashlight instead of a regular flashlight to just look down in the crater. It's because if you look at these moon rocks too long, you could see how shitty the CGI looks. I could guarantee they spent like a nickel on the CG animators who made these moon rock monsters because it
Yeah.
looks awful. You ever see that meme of the crabs dancing on the beach
Yeah.
to that one song? It looks the crabs in this movie look like those crabs. That's
Yeah.
about the quality you have to expect in Apollo 18.
Yeah. Pretty
But
much.
yeah, and he eventually makes it back to the Russian lunar lander, which still has oxygen and power in it, despite the fact that we don't know how long he's been there. And he manages to get it working and take off, even though the government's telling him not to take off. And the last scene we see is he's about to merge and land on the orbiting ship, but then we find out that the the shuttle is full of moon rocks that we just never saw before. They just sort of float up once he goes out of orbit, and then he's attacked by a bunch of moon rocks, and then he crashes the ship and dies in the last like couple of minutes. And it's
Mm.
like, you did not just make me watch this whole piece of shit for that fucking ending. Like,
Now, you want to know something
I
funny? Is that
yes, I
I look
do because I'm begging for anything entertaining, Ian. What's funny?
okay. Well, I mean, it's conceptually funny, but there's four different endings on the Blu-ray that were, or well, I guess five if you include the one that was included. But all that they are just him dying in different ways. Like he loses
What?
he in one of the endings he loses oxygen, and another one, one of the space rocks comes out and like pierces him, and then he dies that way. And then there's another one where he gets infected, and like I guess those scenes where he's spazzing out at the camera, he just breaks the camera in one of those scenes. So I don't know if he, and so I don't know. I guess that one's open to interpretation if he died or not. But and then yeah, so you said that you watched the one where he fell back down to the moon.
No, I watched the one where he rocketed back up and hit the ship.
Oh yeah, yeah, he
opening
collided
guy
with
was
the
on.
ship. So the fourth one was just he, yeah, he lost control and then he went back down in the moon to the moon, and then it blew up that way. So that's all that there is to it.
Can I ask a fucking question? What is it with these found footage movies and having like 15 different endings? The
Yeah, I don't
original
know.
Paranormal Activity did that too. They just could not fucking decide how these movies are supposed to end.
Yeah, I remember when I
So I
watched the
always
original Paranormal Activity, I didn't see the canon ending. So when I watched Paranormal Activity 2, I was a bit confused. But um
yeah,
so like but with this one, yeah, apparently they had like five different endings that they or well, four new endings that they included on the Blu-ray, and I watched them on YouTube because somebody just uploaded them on YouTube, and apparently there are deleted scenes to this movie too, but I just, you know what, I already went above and beyond by checking out those endings.
yes.
I don't need to watch any more footage of Apollo 18 till the day I die.
This was. I have a ranking going on Letterboxd right now of my favorite movies, and right now Dancing It's On, or I guess my favorite movies that we watched, and right now Dancing It's On is my bottom pick, and I think that this is definitely going below it because at least Dancing It's On was fun. because this is a fun vampire movie. Like I got off work after a long day of work, and I sat down and I was like, I'm gonna watch one. I'm gonna finish up my movies for the podcast that we're gonna record tomorrow, and it was Apollo 18. And I just wanted to go to bed. I'd rather go to work than watch this movie. Like, to be completely frank, it is boring. It is the worst. It's the cardinal sin of movies like this. Is it's just boring. It's no fun.
Yeah, it's not special in any way. You'd be that good, bad, or otherwise. It's just it's nothing. And like, and I'm glad that you recommended this actually of the same movie that we talked about, or the same podcast we're talking about, Love Exposure, because I have a lot to say about that movie. But this one, I'm done right now. This is the shortest conversation we've ever had. I have nothing left to give Apollo 18.
Yeah, I'm really willing to take a first time for this podcast and take about 22 minutes away from Apollo 18 and give it to Love Exposure. Yeah. Apollo 18 discussion is absolutely done. I never want to talk about this movie ever again.
Yeah, my only hope is that I never go onto somebody else's podcast and they recommend this for some reason, because that's the only way I'd ever have to watch this movie again. I'm just trying to think of like the scenarios that might come up where I might have to watch this again, and I'm just going to try to avoid all of them.
You're going to be like Nicolas Cage in that movie Next, where he knows what's going to happen at every 5 minutes in the future, and every time a situation comes up where you might have to watch Apollo 18, you'll just juke out of the way and change your fate.
Yeah, exactly. I haven't seen that movie, but sure. I'm sure it's better than Apollo 18, because at least you remembered something about Next. I'm not going to remember.
Exactly.
I've seen this twice now, and I'm not going to remember this after I'm done with the podcast. It's going to be out of my memory forever. And you know what? Thankfully, I haven't walked out of any other movies since Apollo 18, so there's no more ammo for you to torture me with. So, in that regard,
I'm honestly so goddamn sorry, because I thought it was funny. I thought it would be funny. I thought we'd have a laugh, but we're not having a laugh. It was not fun.
Well, I think that the conversation is funny, at least.
Yeah, you know what?
So
yeah,
annoyed.
when God closes a lunar module hatch, a Russian space lunar module door opens.
Exactly. And that's
that was all the energy I had left. How about we go refuel, get ready for takeoff, and we'll come right back and we'll be talking about Love Exposure. So stay tuned.
I fucking hate headphones. I just want earbuds. Whenever I put like my headphones on, like I wear glasses whenever I'm on the laptop. So like when I put the headphones on, I just forget that it's like, you know, I have to put my glasses on first. So I have to take them back off and then put my glasses on to make sure that like I can even get them on. Because
it's just like a whole thing.
Yeah. So I don't know. Most people, I guess, like headphones more than earbuds, but I don't get that. But that's just me.
I kind of get it, but like still, I prefer earbuds.
Yeah.
You have like the wired ones, or you?
To be fair, some people like. Yeah, some people can't fit the earbuds into their ears, so I can understand why like their ear hole is not like made for them. And headphones, I guess, are more universal in that regard. But for me, it's just I can't deal. But,
yeah, well, you know, if you really like earbuds, then you should check out this podcast sponsor, Raycon earbuds. Can you do that? Can you just like pretend that you're being sponsored by someone?
I don't
like.
think
Will they?
so.
Will they be mad?
I think they would be mad.
That seems like a bad thing.
I made like a joke in like one of my. I think it was the reboot video where it's just like. I was just made a joke like this video is sponsored by Raid Shadow, and then it just cuts off or something. But I think it's okay if I don't say the full title or something like that. But I don't know. And I didn't show anything from Raid Shadow Legends.
Yeah,
so.
That's fair. I don't think anyone's ever seen anything from Raid Shadow Legends. I don't believe that's a real game.
I actually do know somebody who plays it. It's Mike's upper. The people who live upstairs from Mike. Whenever we're in the garage, I see him playing
Really?
Raid Shadow Legends. Yeah. Well, to be fair, I mean, I guess if you're into like phone games and stuff like that, that one probably has the most like free stuff that you can get if you just watch a bunch of YouTube channels because everybody sponsors
Yeah.
it. So yeah.
I mean, fair. Yeah.
So
All right.
all right.
Well, can we talk about a good movie now, Ian?
I think we can. I
Yeah,
I say that
do
I
too.
think we can because I don't even know where to start with this one. But
Yeah, but yeah, good. Take it away. Let's introduce us to the world of Shion Sono.
okay, yeah. So this is a movie that I learned about just through being a fan of Sion Sono. I had seen three of his movies before this one, those being Suicide Club, uh, Noriko's Dinner Table, and Strange Circus. I was really into like Japanese horror movies back in the day, and I mean, I
Mhm.
still kind of am. And so I kind of knew him from that genre. But then I saw like he apparently did this movie called Love Exposure, which was not a horror movie, but it was like this 4 hour epic that was just like considered to be his magnum opus by most outlets. And I guess I should say going forward, or before we go forward, like I'm aware that Sion Sono has been blacklisted recently due to sexual misconduct allegations. I'm not going
Oh
to say
wow,
for
I did
sure.
not know this.
Yeah, I'm not going to say for sure that it happened. I'm going to say that I kind of tend to think it probably did. But just based on, the behind the scenes footage I've seen with him, he seems kind of difficult to work with. But, you know, it is what it is. Like, I separate the art from the
Yeah.
artist. We talked about that with Reaper the Genetic Opera. So,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. And Ren and Stimpy and all those other things that we like. So, you have seen one other movie from Sion Sono before, which was Why Don't You Play in Hell?
Yes, and that movie was awesome. I was immediately hooked with his whole style and like he has a vibe, like an auteur vibe that I really enjoy.
Yeah, for sure. And it's kind of like it's interesting because recently I've been getting into kind of the slower Asian movie genre. I don't know really what you call it, but there's like a lot of really like slow Asian movies that are just like about family dramas and stuff like that. Like Yasujiro
Yeah.
Ozu's movies or Korei Ida's movies or the guy who did Drive My Car. I forget the name of that director. I'll search him up right now. But yeah, yeah, I've been getting kind of into those, like, I guess more, I don't know if you want to call them mature or, grounded Asian
Grounded,
movies.
maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. But Sono has always been kind of the antithesis to that style. um, he's kind of described himself as being anti-Ozu in a way, and a lot of his movies and stuff are really inspired by like B movies and stuff like that. And I think
Yeah.
even pornos. I mean, he made that movie Anti-Porno, which, that's another fun one to talk about maybe someday. But it's kind of interesting too, because like this movie it's in the letterbox like top 250, which I was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
And it's pretty high up there too. It's like at 76, so it's like in the top
Oh wow.
100. And it's like this is probably the least classy movie in the entire letterbox 250, at least definitely
Oh
in the
yeah.
top 100. But it's very much playing into, I guess, the darker and more depraved sides of humanity. I mean, I'm glad that so many people seem to be the people who like this movie seem to really like this movie, but I'm kind of
Oh
surprised
yeah.
to see that so many people like it on the same level that I do, and they would put it as like one of the greatest movies of all time. Because for me personally, like Love Exposure is one of my favorite movies I've ever seen in my life. Like it's up there. Maybe it's my favorite movie of like the current millennium, like 2000s. Like I'd even go that far. And I've seen it a few times, despite it being 4 hours. And so this
Yeah.
time I actually uh, went the extra mile because the thing is, the original cut of the movie was 6 hours. That it never got
Oh
released.
my god.
Yeah, but a few years ago, they did a re-edit of this movie, which added about 30 extra minutes from those 6 hours, and they released it as a TV show. So I watched the
Oh,
kind of extended Love Exposure TV show version
okay.
of the movie, which added in a few extra scenes. And I also watched a making of thing that was about an hour long, which wasn't that significant. It was just kind of cool to see them on the set and everything. But I
Yeah.
guess what were your kind of initial impressions when you started watching it, and where you ended up after you watched it? I guess that's what I want to start off with.
Well, yeah, that's a really good question because there's a lot of feelings that come up whenever you watch a movie like this. I talked about Freddy Got Fingered in the last segment, and I don't usually do written reviews on Letterboxd, but I did one for this one because I felt very strongly about it because it really felt like cinema of the depraved, like things that are supposed to upset you. Like it's just you're supposed to be disturbed by what you're looking at, but not in like a traditional sense. Like you're supposed to be disturbed, but also be conflicted as to like how you feel about it. And that's really what I felt like going into this movie as it went along. Because you start off, and firstly, this movie is. I want to say right off the bat, I totally agree with you. I think this might be one of my favorite movies we watched on the show so far. Um,
Oh, I'm glad to
just
hear it.
based on yeah, and it just based on the themes that it's tackling. It's like this champloo, this like hodgepodge of sex and religion as like the same thing, like perversion and faith put
Yeah.
together
Well, it's like
and mashed together.
it's something where I don't know if you seen Everything Everywhere All at Once?
I haven't yet. Oh my god, it's
Okay.
been on my list forever.
Yeah, watching that this time, because I really like that movie a lot, but I haven't seen Love Exposure since I saw that movie. But when I watched Love Exposure this time around, it really kind of reminded me of that, just in the way like the scope of everything that like, it's trying to like cover. I mean, this movie's about you know, so many different themes and so many different angles and so many different parts of society. It's about religion, it's about cults, it's about upskirt panty photography, it's about perversion, it's about kung fu, it's about street gangs, it's about
Love.
to quote Yoko in the movie, it's about hope, faith, and love, and the most important of all those three, love. And like this is
Yeah.
like, by the way, that scene on the beach where she's like doing that monologue, like that gives me goosebumps every time I watch it. But anyway, I'll get to that
Yeah,
later.
I watched that scene I think like 3 times because I
Yeah,
just had to take it all in.
yeah, exactly. Like that is like the acting in that is so amazing. I mean, and just the monologuing and everything. But anyway, so yeah, with like all these things with Love Exposure covers, it's really kind of like if somebody asks you what this movie is about, it's like I don't know everything. Like what do you like? How do I even
Literally,
sum it up?
but yeah, like that's the real thing is it's so hard to make a movie like this because like another Japanese movie I talk about it sometimes is Akira. We talk about that movie feels like they tried to condense all of the source material in it down into a movie, and I think it's a very important movie. But I feel my opinion, I think the opinion of you is this: it's too much, and that movie is not 4 hours long, but this movie is 4 hours long and gives it space to breathe. You know?
Yeah,
Like once I got to the end of chapter one and we got into a little bit of more of the other characters other than you, it feels like every single one of these characters is the star of their own movie before they all collide. Like
yeah,
they have their like it's not just like a one-off backstory. It really feels like you can either compromise for a normal feature film length and give them a regular flashback and a backstory and go through all the regular stuff, or you could go all in and hope that you have the talent and the skill to keep an audience engaged while you're feeding them all of this information in a really unconventional way.
yeah.
The first chapter of this movie is fully linear, but then we start jumping it around and seeing it from other people's perspectives just to set the stage for what's going to happen in the rest of the movie.
Yeah, and I do want to say if you
And
watch the TV show version at some point, There's a lot more of
Which I
that when we
will.
go into like the. Yeah, I can send you a link to that, but because it is kind of hard to find. But yeah,
Yeah.
there's so much more with Koike and her beginnings at the Zero Church. Like, there's so much more of that
Oh my
within like
gosh.
the TV show version, and I do I want to get into Koike because she might be my favorite character, but like there's just everybody in this movie. Like the first hour of it, like you're right, it's very much like I kind of use this analogy kind of jokingly, but also not. It's kind of like moral oral in the sense that like the first season the first hour is very much like a first season episode of moral oral where it's like, okay, he misinterprets what he's supposed to be doing and he goes to do that based on his like religion and stuff like that.
Oh my.
But
Oh my
then it
god. I
becomes like
never
so much.
ever thought of that.
Yeah, but then as the movie goes on, it becomes about so much more. It becomes about the first hour is kind of like a comedy in some sense. I mean, there's definitely drama within the first hour, especially regarding Yu's
Oh
mother.
yeah.
But yeah, like the door just opens up after that second chapter starts, and then the third chapter starts, and there's more of that too, and like there's so much more of the. Yeah, it branches off into all these different directions, and it's a very assaulting experience. Let me just say, on the senses, in a good way.
Yeah, for sure. It's like it's almost like cartoony. When we get into like the later parts of Yu's initial story, when he starts sinning and he starts pushing back against his father, it's an amazing. Like, I would say that the first hour of this movie could have, like, I figured that is what we're in for when I first started watching it. This is the story of you and this albeit perverted passion that he starts to try to connect with his father through conflict, but then it just opens up into this whole other thing regarding Koike and Yoko, which, like, it blew my mind how much this, like, because not a lot of directors will go this far. And again, you could say that considering some of the the behind the scenes stories and stories of how he was so hard to work with, Sono might have taken it a little too far. But in the end, you really have something that is more than the sum of its parts, and the sum of its parts is huge.
Yeah, that's the thing too. Is like there's a reason why I've watched this movie multiple times, even though it's 4 hours, and I would watch the TV show again with it being 4.5 hours because like it's not like it's just like stuff happens and then it's assaulting in that, but like it also just makes you think. Like the movie is such this hodgepodge of different emotions. Like there are parts that I laughed at and I laughed pretty hard at a lot of parts too,
Yeah.
especially with like the the panty photography training. That was probably the funniest part of the movie, in my opinion, with like
Yeah.
the old
Honestly,
guy.
I missed the old. What was his name? Lloyd.
Yeah,
Lloyd.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
he was awesome.
yeah,
Knew I was
exactly. Yeah, and so there was parts of it that made me laugh. There's parts of me that made me think. There's a couple scenes that made me cry. I'm not even gonna lie. There's stuff that really
Yeah.
shocked me. There's stuff that really exhilarated me. There's even like you can see parts of Sono's, I guess, horror kind of aspect in this. In that, like the way that a lot of this stuff unfolds, it really becomes like horrific and hard to watch at a lot of points. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's just
I,
like,
I
especially, I mean, the ending, or well, not the ending, but like the finale with the Zero Church, I would say, but also like earlier on that when you're like watching Yoko's story of her grow like and the position that she grew up into, and how she ended up being the way that she is. It's like it's really a tragic, and really a lot of those scenes are very very hard to watch.
yeah. No, it's absolutely like he takes it to the absolute most depraved. Whenever you like look into it as close as possible, even if you don't, it's on the surface level. It is repelling. If you go into this movie expecting a movie with regular subject matter, you're going to be bounced off like a hot brick. You're
Yeah.
gonna toss it. Like, you really need to be in it for the long haul. it never lets up, not even for a second. Even at their most heroic, the heroes of this movie do terrible things. Yu does horrible things for the greater good and for love and
Yeah.
for his family.
Well, that's the thing too. Like going back to Moral Oral, like he reminded me of Oral in that sense, or even Butters from South Park in the sense that they're doing horrible things, but not because they have bad intentions. It's just that they misunderstand how those sort of things can be construed, and they're trying to do it for like a good motive, but for whatever reason, like it's kind of like it's a little bit creepy if like those allegations about Sono are true, because like a lot of this you can
Yeah,
interpret as being like, oh, the moral of the story is that perverts aren't really that bad of people. But I mean, I don't think it's that simple. But I mean, you could interpret it that way, and it's it does kind of make you a little bit nervous. But then again, does that really take away from the experience of watching it? Because it's supposed to be like fucked up and depraved, and you're supposed to think about those things while you're watching it. So I don't even know if it really. Not that I'm defending Sono if those allegations are true, but you know, I like. I don't think it makes for a worse movie with love exposure, in my opinion. But
yeah, no, and I did a cursory amount of research. Probably didn't go as deep in as you did, but the fact that this movie takes place, most of the story revolves around the Zero Church and this cult. It's not surprising that when I look it up, Sono's early life is he was indoctrinated into an actual cult in Japan, which seems like
yeah,
it's quite an issue in Japan. Is these cult like organizations taking people in?
yeah, it's
And
kind of.
if
I was
that's the
gonna.
case,
Oh, sorry. I was gonna just say that, like, there's in the trailer and then at the beginning of every part of the TV show. I don't even know I don't remember if it's at the beginning of the movie too, but it says this is based off of a true story, which I don't. It's
yeah,
not, but there is some truth to the story. Both in one of the other ways was that Sono knew somebody who did upskirt panty photography, and but this whole story
yeah.
about the church and everything, because yeah, he was indoctrinated when he ran away from home when he was younger. In order to survive, he joined a cult, and then he tried to leave the cult, and then the cult started sending letters to his home to like get him back. So apparently, what he did is he joined a terrorist organization so that the cult wouldn't follow him there because they thought they would get killed. And then he left the terrorist organization and never heard from them or the cult again.
So I guess it's easier to join a terrorist organization than leave a cult.
Yeah, I guess so.
My God, what kind of life does this guy lead? And again, that's not the. It's really it really shows that this guy is outside the realm of normal, which isn't to just excuse anything that he's done
Yeah.
or anything that he's been but any allegations against him. It's just it's interesting to see a person who is just south of normal making a movie like this because it is so out there. I think I think it's best we I guess try to summarize the plot of this movie. Is that even possible?
Well, I haven't even been trying. Like, I can tell you that, like, it starts off for the first hour of the story with you and his father. I think his name's Tetsu, if I remember. Yeah, Tetsu. And so,
Tetsu.
yeah, and then his mom dies, and then Tetsu becomes, I guess, a priest in response to that, but then he meets another woman named Kaori, and then Kaori starts to, like, interfere with their lives, and then Kaori leaves Tetsu for another man, and then Tetsu becomes an abusive priest, and he starts like putting you through all this stuff, and then he starts to demand that you confess his sins, and then you can't think of
But
any
you
sins
isn't. Yeah, because
after a
he's a
while.
good boy. He literally is oral for moral oral.
Yeah,
Like this guy has never done anything wrong in his life.
yeah, and that's one thing I really like about the first act of the movie is that for the first like I don't know half hour 20 minutes, you is not a proactive character. He's just kind of like following what his parents are doing and stuff like that, which is very true of like a child growing up, and then
Yeah,
him kind of like breaking out into this whole other world of like, okay, what's happens when I do take control of my life and my destiny. And at first it's like, yeah, he starts confessing his sins, then he can't think of any, so he starts committing sins, and that causes his father to get pissed off and leave their house and stay at the church. So in order to see his father, Yu starts committing worse and worse sins, and then it's like, hey, he meets like a gang of people
who
who
yeah,
I forget their names.
the like it was Yuji, it was Senpai, and I forget the other I want to say Takashi,
Oh
maybe?
yeah,
I
but
don't
I
remember.
forget the name of their gang. I want to say the Fuck Bombers, but that's from Why Don't You Play in Hell? So, yeah. But
But yeah,
anyway, he
it's
joins this gang.
I
Yeah, and so then there's like, hey, you know what priests really hate more than anything, and will get a reaction out of him is if you do perverted sins, and that's why you starts like taking. He starts to learn the, I guess, methodology to.
yeah, what it's like a martial art.
Yeah, he goes in. He sees like this panty photographer guru or something, and who teaches him all the different ways of how to be discreet and like how to do it with style, and you know, and that's a really funny like I
He
guess montage of him. I guess taking all these
yes.
photos and shit.
Yeah, it's that's definitely at the moment where I was like, "Oh, okay, we're going out there with this movie. This movie is more than what meets the eye." At that point, I was like, "Okay, we're going out there."
Yeah, but that was just tip of the iceberg. Like, as it got way,
Yeah.
way, way crazier. But yeah, but basically, you starts to do all these different things. But one thing that he learned from the death, or one thing he carried over from the death of his mother, was to find what he calls in the movie his Mary, as in the Virgin Mary, like the one he loves, like, and so that leads to this, I guess, gigantic. I don't know. At its core, you could say it's a love triangle between a misandrist, a innocent kind of pervert, and a cult leader. I guess that's the
Yeah,
best way I
and
can sum it up.
yeah, and like I would say that those three are the most important and most integral characters in the whole movie because they're all tied to some level of religion and some level of perversion in like the loosest sense of the word, I guess, because you have you, who is this character who has only known faith to Cristo, and only followed the teachings that would make him closer to his father. But it's not really because he believe. I guess it feels like his faith. It's more of an extension of his emotions towards his parents. Like he doesn't seem to be devoted to Jesus or the teachings of Christ or anything.
You didn't think so?
What it seems is well, I do. I do. I think he definitely does. But I think that the reason that he is so devoted is because it is a vehicle to be connected to his parents. It's the promise that he made to his mother. Is connected to that faith, and the only way he can connect with his father is through his father's priesthood, and it's everything is tied to that. Everyone has a reason for why they do things. So I think that Yu has a reason for why he is religious and why he is connected to the church for the same reason that he is a pervert and takes upskirt photos and eventually joins he eventually joins a porn production company to do it
Wasn't it
professionally.
like
And
Bukkake Productions or something like that?
Bukake-sa, yeah. and he joins a cult for his family to keep them safe. Like it family's really important to him, whereas you have a character like Yoko who is almost the antithesis of that.
Yeah.
Like she rejects familial ties because of what happened to her, and she falls into her connection with Kaori and her connection to Jesus and the Bible and Christianity, and it's sort of the only way that she can see hope and faith and hope and love in her life.
Yeah. Other than
And
Kurt
then
Cobain.
yes, I was
That's one of my favorite.
Cobain.
That's one of my
She
favorite lines. This is like, Jesus, I accept you in my heart as the only cool man other than Kurt Cobain.
she honestly, Yoko is great. I think she's one of my favorite characters in the whole movie.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean,
Um,
all three of those characters are amazing. Like the. I mean, I also do like use Dad and Kaori, but like the dynamic between you, Yoko, and Koke, like that's like those three are absolutely the heart and soul of this movie that it really rides on, and they're all great. Like there's just because the movie's 4 hours, it gives us enough time to flesh out like three, I guess, protagonists in their own right, even though one of them's an
Yeah,
antagonist. But like three people who like get way more development in a movie than most people would, and like any kind of like scenario like that. So
I think it's really funny that we chose two movies with three main characters, and one of them had no character development, and another one had all of the character development. I think that's so funny.
yeah,
Um, yeah,
because with you, I mean, the way that he kind of like develops throughout the movie is that he maintains the heart that he has from the very beginning. It's just that he learns like these different ways and like these different trials and tribulations. Like he goes through a lot of challenges in this movie in order to win over Yoko's heart and like to connect with his family and all that stuff. But like it's just the way that he grows up and he kind of matures and he realizes all these different scenarios. Like I don't want to say like he's the one, I guess, where exactly where his heart is and where he wants to be and where he's going and all that. And
yeah,
that kind of like becomes, I don't like it, that kind of grounds the movie as much as this movie will ever be grounded in anything. um Yoko is probably the
yeah.
one who changes the most throughout the story.
Hmm.
I would say, where she like goes from like this incredibly jaded and man-hating and just even just cynical in general into like kind of opening up and letting love into her heart and like what that actually means to her. And and overcoming, I guess it's kind of like, I guess her development is a lot more reluctant than you, where you is trying to like actually build up toward what he wants. Yoko's kind of like, she thinks that she knows everything. I think she even says that near the end, where it's like she thought she knew everything, but she kind of realized throughout all this that she knows nothing. And
Yeah,
I think that Yoko is maybe the most powerful character in the movie in terms of like what I felt for her, which is kind of like when you were first introduced to her, she's not a very likable person, but you just come to understand her on such a deeper level, which is what I really appreciate about her, and like how how much she changes, and like because of you and because of Koke, but because of you in a good way.
yeah. And it's like I really see you and Yoko as like two sides of the same coin. Because if we're talking about how I really see this as three movies, I got into a three-way car accident and that they're all mangled together into this perfect mess of a 4 hour epic. And you, I really see him as like his story is usually quite lighthearted
I mean, in
to the
tone, he
point
does some pretty
where
dark stuff, but like it's not
oh
presented that
yes,
way.
yes, it's presented lighthearted in tone, and that's because he's a naive character and he can't really grasp the weight of some of these actions that he commits. Um, Meanwhile, Yoko is so incredibly aware of the tragedy of her own life that you can't help but get this sense of sadness whenever she speaks and whenever scenes revolve around her. So it's like these two sides, like the comedy and tragedy of life, almost represented in these two characters. And then you've got our third character, who is the antithesis of both of these. They're basically I I don't even know where to start with her. So you said that more stuff was revealed in the TV show. What was revealed? Because I was so interested in her backstory and everything that happened with her, especially the scenes that were with her father.
Yeah, it's actually funny because that whole like castration scene got censored in the TV show version I saw, where it wasn't
Oh
in the movie.
wow,
But that was probably just whatever network it aired on. They wanted that to be
yeah,
censored, which I can understand. But
yeah.
yeah,
It was
with
very incredible. I didn't expect it to go as far as it did.
with Koike, like she's very much, I would say in a lot of ways she's very much an evil character, but she's also a character who I kind of feel a lot for, because
Yeah,
you understand where it's coming from. You understand, like, it's kind of like Yoko, whereas like Yoko is at least at the point where she can still be redeemed. Koike is not. Like Koike is this manipulative, like horrible cult leader who, finds these, I guess, you know, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, but
They're vulnerable people.
vulnerable, that's the word I was looking for. Yeah. So she knows how to like scout out these vulnerable people and get her to do her bidding and what she wants, and she's very, very good at it. And the earlier scenes that were in the show of her at the Zero Church, they didn't add a whole lot in terms of like context or anything. It was just kind of like the stuff that you would understand of her like going and joining the church, and how she kind of like scouted out her friends, and how she kind of built up her legacy and stuff like that. It's very like, I won't
Yeah.
spoil it for you. I will say, like, just while we're on the topic, I was kind of like, when I watched the TV show version, I was wondering if I would like it more or not, more or less than the movie version. And I don't know if I like them both a lot. I'll say that I would recommend the uninitiated watch the movie version first, because
Yeah.
yeah, there's just so much of this movie is like dependent upon, or why it's so impressive, I should say. So much of it has to do with like the pacing and the editing and like the quickness of it and all that stuff. And if you really like that stuff, like the TV show doesn't get rid of it, but it does add more scenes which were not necessary, which is why they weren't in the movie. So I would just say it's good
Yeah.
extracurricular stuff, but I wouldn't say that you're missing like a whole lot if you just watch the movie version over the TV show. So that's kind of where my thoughts on it were, in regards to that. But I do like the added scenes in the TV show, just because some of them are just like, relationship scenes between Yoko and Yu, but there's a lot of Koike in there, and it doesn't add a whole lot of context. It's just kind of like more fun stuff from Love Exposure. Like, it doesn't make it better or worse being there, is what I would say. Which is actually, there's this one other Sion Sono. I mean, it started off as a movie, and then he turned it into a TV show, and that was Forest of Love, which you can watch on Netflix. And
Oh.
in that case, I would definitely recommend watching the TV show version, because the movie version of Forest of Love condenses it way too much to where it's just kind of all over
Oh
the
wow.
place. It works way better as a TV show. But Love Exposure, I think you could just do one or the other. I mean, it doesn't. And he's done that a few times too. He did that with Tokyo Vampire Hotel, which I haven't seen the movie version of that. I've only seen the TV show version. But anyway, to get
Yeah.
back to Koke, one thing that I kind of liked about her in the movie too, and one of the reasons I'd recommend kind of watching that, is because she's such a mysterious character, in the sense that she's always lurking in the background. She's always, you know, she's kind of like, I guess this is a weird analogy to use, but she's kind of like Gus Fring or Sauron, in the sense that
Oh my god, yeah.
even if she's not like actively in the scene, you can feel her presence kind of looming over the rest of the characters, and how she's observing them and making her next move in her mind and doing all those sort of things. And it sounds weird saying that about, like, I don't know, like a 20 something year old Japanese girl, but that's like the great contrast between her character too, is that she's so threatening for like the kind of like, I guess, the visual representation of what she is, and like how she kind of looks a little bit feeble on the surface, but there's so much more to that character, and that's why I really love her.
Yeah, she's honestly so frightening. And I haven't seen any of Sono's horror movies, but I can clearly see the horror movie influence whenever there's ever a scene with her.
Yeah.
She is just so, it's like chilling to watch her. She always feels like she's in control. She always feels like she has you under her thumb, like she's like, there's this way that she looks at you that make it really just makes it feel like he is always in control
Yeah.
of the situation, which is absolutely why I see the comparison to like Sauron or Gus Fring, because that's just who she is. It's what her circumstances have put her in. She's this controlling person, and it's like her plan to the Zero Church is to convert Yu's family, because Yu's father is a Catholic priest, and it's would be good for the church, but it doesn't seem like, just on the surface, even seeing the scenes where she's talking about her plan to the Zero Church, It does not seem like that is the base of what she needs. What she wants is to hurt these people, and the Zero Church almost has nothing to do with it. She's just got this innate desire to manipulate and hurt people, and it's
But
really scary.
yeah, the thing is, like, you can tell just by like the way she's in, like, she's actually in love with you. But this is how she
Oh
shows
yeah,
love to people. Like, that's why she's so fascinated and why she's filming him and taking pictures of him doing all these like things and following him around, is because this is like how she understands love, and this is how she wants to, like, that's love to her, is manipulation, and getting everything she wants and like lining that up for her purposes and everything
yeah,
like that. That's how she interprets it. Because the thing is, like, with this movie, I mean, it's, even though it's about love, it's not like what you would think of like in a movie about love, in the sense of like, oh, it's love conquers all or something like that. I mean, there's definitely that kind of aspect in this movie, but it's also showing you just how love can make you do these horrible, horrible things if you're like a character like Koke, or even you. Like, a lot of what the horrible things that he does them out of love for his father or love for Yoko. Like, he's doing these horrible things
yeah,
that are being, but the reason he's doing them are, with pure intention in a lot of ways. So
yeah. Even if we want to talk, I guess we should talk about. I think it's a fool's errand to try to recap this whole movie, but I think we should probably talk about that last hour, where he takes on the Zero Church.
dressed as Miss,
That
oh, we haven't even
that's
brought up
prob-
Miss Scorpion.
Oh my god, yeah, yeah. So the central misunderstanding of this plot is, around the hour mark, you you and Yoko meet for the first time because Yoko is being attacked by street gangs that are led by Koke, of course.
Yeah.
Um, but you is it's all based on chance, which I think is great. You loses a bet with his friends and has to dress up as a lady and kiss a girl. That's all he has to do. And in that process, he saves Yoko and has her fall madly in love with him, dressed as Miss Scorpion, which I understand is a reference to another Japanese movie. Apparently, that went way over my head. But
Oh, which one is that? I
they
actually don't know the.
I actually don't know either, but apparently he's dressed as a character from a different Japanese movie. And
Okay.
she Yoko falls in love with Miss Scorpion, and Yu falls in love with Yoko.
Oh,
And at
female
that
prisoner
point,
number 701, Scorpion. That's what the movie was.
oh yeah, yes, female. I knew it was female prisoner something, but I didn't want to look stupid. Yeah, but yeah. So the crux of the drama is that Yu is trying to reveal that he is trying to start a relationship with Yoko, but Yoko hates men, and now she is in love with Miss Scorpion, which is the only person in the world that she loves, and
And she
it's this
thinks that she's a
drama
lesbian
of
because of that.
yes, which is another whole thing when you talk about perversion, because her adopted, I guess adoptive mother, you could say that, um, tells her that being a lesbian is perverted and a sin, which is again like it's this whole concept of you is a pervert for his upskirt panty photos,
Yeah.
and Kaori is allegedly in the eyes of the church a pervert for being a lesbian, and uh, Koike is perverted in the sense that, like, through religion, I would say she has perverted the concept of religion to take
Yeah.
advantage of people. It's all about that. But anyway,
Yeah, and another thing is Kaori is the person who's like with Yu's father, so uh Yoko and Yu become
yes,
adoptive siblings, which makes it even more fucked up.
yeah, but again, there's just what I said, cinema of the depraved. Just every taboo possible is presented in this movie as a dramatic situation, and I think that's great to like push the boundaries like that. But yeah, so by the end of the movie, you and Yoko have been split up. Yoko is indoctrinated into the Zero Church along with the rest of Yu's family, and Yu
Yeah.
sees that the only option is to attack the Zero Church and get in to save Yoko and his family, which he does. He goes in armed, dressed like Miss Scorpion, armed with a sword and a bomb, and
Yeah.
he's planted this bomb in the Zero Church. He kills the I guess I forget what his name was, but he was essentially the de facto leader of the entire church.
Oh yeah, I
Um,
know who you're talking about, but I'm
yeah,
blanking on the name too.
and and he basically there's this great scene where he's going to find his family, and it's intercut between this like on the surface very nice dinner between Koke and Yu's family, and it's in this white room, and they're
And Kokei's
eating
like
like hot.
two henchwomen. I forget what their names are.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and they're all. This is honestly the scene where I think it exemplifies everything about this movie. Is other than the ending, I guess I would say, is you eventually bursts in and kills some of the guards that were chasing him,
Yeah.
which is with these great blood spray gore effects
Which
that
Sono
are
did
just so
himself.
perfect.
That I found that out from looking at
Oh wow!
the behind the scenes stuff. Is that when it comes to like blood splatter and stuff, Sono paints that himself. So
Oh wow! Yeah. So and eventually he's captured and tries in vain to try to get Yoko to come back to back home with him, get his family to come back home, but he he can't convince her, and Yoko starts to strangle him. And there's this moment where he realizes that it's almost like a moment that breaks him and
yeah,
almost drives him mad. And it's just really it's heartbreaking, this moment. I
yeah,
like where everything falls apart, and yeah, it's so overwhelming. It's like in this stark white room, and if you have nowhere to escape other than into what is being said to each other, and the bonds that are being broken between these people because of what's happening. And this is honestly the worst thing that you does in this whole movie is turn on that bomb and hurt so many people, but in the end it's fucked up, but he saved them
yeah.
is the
Because
thing.
that's what
Like
happened. That's how they eliminated the church. Is because the police saw what happened, and they drove to the place, and the church dissipated, and so yeah, it was another thing where it was like the meat. I don't want to say like the ends justify the means, but there was some good that came out of that, which is like fucked up.
oh yeah, another question I had for you. Why do you I'm sure this isn't as up for debate as anyone would say, but in this scene, uh, Koke, after the bomb goes off, I think Koke realizes that this is the end for the church, and takes the sword that you brought with him and kills herself with it,
Hmm.
which is was really shocking. Um, just an amazing end for that character. Like without this control, she's nothing. She couldn't. Nobody could give it to her. You know?
Yeah, well, beyond just the church itself, I think she also realized that Yu is so in love with Yoko that, there's no way, like, as much manipulation, as good as Koke is at, twisting people's minds and doing stuff like that, she can't reach Yu in that way. And she never does throughout the whole entire movie. Like, Yu is the only person who is not, like, indoctrinated by Koke, even when he joins the church for a while. That's just so that he can get close to Yoko and his dad. So it's like, there's that's I think part of the reason, that's part of the attraction Koke has to you, is that she she sees someone who's so pure in a sense, and that attracts her. But it's also like he seems like the perfect person to be manipulated, but at the same time she just can't reach him like she can with all the other characters, and that's what's like so fascinating about her, I guess, romantic feelings towards you especially.
Yeah, and it all comes to a head there, and basically everyone goes their separate ways. Like several, I don't know if years. I think it's a couple months go by,
Yeah.
and Yoko is living with her relatives. Tetsu and Kaori are in a support group, and they actually look happy for the first time. That's the other thing I mentioned is Tetsu and Kaori's relationship is very interesting because, of course, he's a Catholic priest or a Christian or a priest, so he is unable to get married, and his love, it's sort of this twisted love that he has for Kaori that keeps him from continuing his faith. Is almost he has more faith in her than in God. Um, and yeah, he you expect him to get that faith back because it's such this narrative thing of faith conquering, again, faith, hope, and love, but love more than anything, right? So
Yeah, because like he has the
he
faith in God, but like the reason he like turned to the church in the first place was because his wife died, and then
yeah,
what made him leave was also because he found another woman that he wanted to be with, and it's kind of funny. It's like, you know, so many fucked up things happen to those two throughout the movie, but like the fact that they're still in support with each other, like they still love each other and they're still working together on their relationship. It's just that, you know, whether that be as a priest and as a mistress, as a husband and wife, as two people indoctrinated in a church, or as two people getting support from that church, like their feelings for each
think
other. I mean, I don't want to say they never waver because they do in the beginning, but like it's just kind of weird how that dictates so much of their journey, even when, you know, they're doing kind of the opposite.
yeah, no, it's almost like a representation of more mature, unclouded love after like a long life. Because in the end, I think this movie really is a coming of age story. In the most bombastic way, it's you realizing what love truly means,
Yeah.
and Yoko realizing what love truly means, and I guess Koke realizing that the love that she perceived never meant anything. And
Yeah.
it's a really, by the end of this movie, it's you look at everything that you've gone through, and you're so surprised at how emotionally invested you are based on a movie that started with upskirt panty photos and cross-dressing lesbian extravaganzas and like
Yeah, that's the thing
it
too. It's like you
it
could describe this movie if you want to use like the most mundane terms. It's like, oh well, it's a teen romance about, you know, love and what it means to be loved, and it's just like, oh okay, it's just like, but it's also 4 hours long and, you know, is basically centering around somebody's erection. It's like, oh okay.
yes, exactly. Which I gotta say, the funniest part of that movie is the prop erection that they give you every time he gets a boner is so huge. It's so funny every single time. But at the same time, that boner is one of the most emotional parts during the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Is basically at this point you is in a mental hospital because he's lost his mind, because he's lost everything. He's lost his family, he's lost his he's basically believes he's Miss Scorpion now
Yeah.
until Yoko realizes what she did and what she threw away and comes to see him and tries to convince him. She's just begging him like to come back to her. And finally when he remembers her, he gets that fucking boner, like this crazy insane boner. It's like a 45-degree angle up when he's standing.
Yeah.
It's nuts. And but you can't, it's funny at first, but by the end it is the most emotional boner you've ever seen in your entire life.
Yeah.
Like I almost cried when he got that boner.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like,
And that was another
and
scene that did make me cry quite a bit when I was like, especially when they pulled Yoko out of the hospital. I was like, oh fuck.
yeah.
I don't I didn't think I'd be this emotionally attached to these two by the end, but I was.
Yeah,
So
and the pacing is so consistent this movie that when it really gives you a lot of time after Yoko is pulled out of the hospital, you really get to sit with you and watch him process and get out of this sort of
yeah.
self-imposed madness that he's put himself in, and watch him pull himself up mentally, and it's so incredibly good to watch. He is like the performance for the actor who plays you is he's doing incredible in this scene. You really get the it's all just face acting, but you really understand what he's going through.
Yeah, I actually
And
looked
yeah,
into that actor and like he hasn't done a whole lot of stuff. Like he's this is like his first feature film, I think. He was in some TV shows. He's more like a singer, I guess,
oh
in
yeah,
Japan. So like he's not even like that experienced of an actor, but he does a really great job. And then, the other two like they're also well, I mean, like, as in Yoko and Koike, they've been in more stuff. I've definitely seen Sakura Ando, who plays Koike in a lot of stuff. She was in Shoplifters, and she was in Monster and Godzilla Minus One. So, like,
oh
yeah, she's had like a very fruitful career that's gotten international attention for a lot of this stuff, and like they're all great, and like I hope that they're in more. Like I've seen the other two, the people who played Yu and Yoko. I don't want to butcher their names like I definitely would, but I've seen them in other Sono projects, but I haven't seen them in anything else beyond those.
yeah, the end of the movie, they finally reunite, and that is where it ends too. Is when the first there's the very last shot of the movie is Yoko in the back of a police cruiser, and Yu is chasing her down, running from all the orderlies at at the mental hospital, and he stops the car, or Yoko chokes out the police officer in the car and causes him to spin out,
Yeah,
and Yu breaks the window and reaches out his hand, and she takes his hand. Fucking credits, the end. What an amazing, because that's all you need to know.
yeah,
That's the last loose end, is do these two people get together? And the answer is of course they do, because love is the most important thing
yeah.
in
And it's
life.
actually kind of funny. Like if you really think about that ending, it's like okay, they're probably both going to jail for a little while because of what they did to the cop,
Yeah,
but and the cop car. But it doesn't matter though because like they have each other at the end and like they found out what it really means to them and they had that realization. They're like amazing, and
yeah,
yeah, it's like it's such a positive ending to such a you know angry and messy movie and like it couldn't be any better in my opinion.
honestly, yeah. I
I
I'll tell you,
guess.
Ian. Again, the best movie we've seen on this podcast was Harakiri. It's good. I'm gonna have to ruminate on it, but this might be a little bit better than that.
I
I
prefer this to Harakiri in my opinion. The only Japanese movie that might top love exposure for me is Kurosawa's Ikaru, but even then I'm not even sure about that.
Yeah, I it just goes to show there's one, if you take the risk that Sono did. Again, you could say whatever you want about him, whatever allegations are happening right now for this movie. If you take the risk that he did, sometimes it pays off. It's like one of those things where it's like sometimes you capture lightning in a 4 hour long bottle, and that's exactly what happened here.
Yeah, and another thing I really like about the movie, and I don't think this is brought up enough when people talk about it, is like the way that it's shot. It's kind of like this handy cam footage. Like it's very like it looks a little bit low
It's
budget in
frenetic.
that sense. Yeah, but like it's very
Yeah,
much yeah, it's very frenetic. It really fits with the like what they're going with the movie and like all the you know it's I really kind of appreciate that era of Sono, which was also very true of like Noriko's Dinner Table and Strange Circus. But
which I'm
with
gonna have to check out because honestly, I'm hooked.
yeah, Noriko's Dinner Table's like it's a semi sequel to Suicide Club. I like it a lot more than Suicide Club in my opinion. But yeah, I mean maybe we could do a double feature of those one day for the podcast. But
Yeah,
yeah, with the way that this is kind of shot and then it becomes because like that style for me really works. I really like the kind of like digital low budget photography that they use, but then it starts to kind of get a little bit creepy because you start to see Koike filming them, and then it kind of feels like a little bit voyeuristic in that sense, where
ah,
it's just like, oh, this is kind of making me feel uncomfortable, and There's
That's a
just
really good point.
especially like one of my favorite scenes is like when you and Yoko are on the phone with each other, or well, you is being Miss Scorpion, and then you see Koike kind of like slowly, her face kind of slowly come up from the bottom as she's listening into these two conversations, and it's just it makes me feel like so creepy whenever I watch that scene. But like it's
Yeah.
really it's funny too though. Like it's also like every single like emotion, like there's also like all the drama, there's humor under the drama, and all the humor, there's drama under the humor. So like yeah, it's very balanced in that way. And I don't even think we got into the fact that Koike eventually uh pretends that she's Miss Scorpion, and then that's
Yeah, there's so much we didn't get into
yeah,
that
exactly.
like
I even like
we
the stuff with like the gang that you has, and the other three people who he's doing with, like there's
who
so
are
much.
great.
Yeah,
I love his friends. There's honestly so much I want to get into that
yeah,
even if we subtract time from Apollo 18's discussion time, we can't get into all of it.
yeah, exactly.
It-
You's friends kind of
like
reminded me of like Jesse's friends in Breaking Bad too, like Badger and
yeah,
Skinny Pete, where it's like you just think they're kind of like fucked up dumbasses, but like as they go on, like they actually kind of become endearing in their own ways. So
yeah,
there's
absolutely.
and I
To
would say
the
that
point where
about
like he has to like say goodbye to them before he goes and attacks the Zero Church, and it's like one of the most emotional moments.
yeah.
And it's like you really care about these like characters. Like
Yeah. Like even Koike, as horrible as she is, like when she stabs herself at the end, like it should be seen as like, oh, this big victory, right? Because like that's the main villain getting what's coming to her. But it's actually really sad and really tragic to see that happen, because you just know like how fucked up like her life has been and what led to that moment. And there's so much like pain and suffering that goes into this, and for a lot of the movie there's a whole lot of pain and suffering. And that's actually another thing too, is this I guess is the beginning of what's a spiritual trilogy from Sono called the Hate Trilogy, which follows with
okay,
Cold Fish and Guilty of Romance. And both of those movies too, Cold Fish and Guilty of Romance, are among Sono's best. Especially, I really love Guilty of Romance, but yeah, I mean, there's so much more to talk about. Like, there's no fucking way that we'd be doing a triple feature of all those, because like there's
holy shit.
there's more than enough to talk about in each one. But yeah, and especially Love Exposure though. This is the top of the peak of the mountain in my opinion of Sono, and I kind of I wrote this in my notes, and I'm kind of joking when I say it, but I wish I never saw this movie, so that when I was on my deathbed, I could watch it for the first time and be like, oh, okay, this is what an entire lifetime of watching movies was leading up to, was this. It would make sense.
That honestly, that's probably the highest praise you could give it, and
Yeah.
and I totally agree, 100%.
Yeah, so I mean, I know maybe I don't know if I'm coming off as like, just crazy gushing Love Exposure fanboy here, but there's a reason why this is number 76. Not that there's any sort of objective merit to any sort of top 250, but I mean, like, you got to think about it. Like, even on the Letterboxd top 250, like, this is above Psycho, this is above One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, this is above The Thing, this is above The Seventh Seal. Like, all these classic movies are the type of thing that people compare Love Exposure to, and it's just kind of mind-blowing when you really think about that in the same movie where there's a bukkake agency. And it totally deserves it, though.
When it's rated at that same level, then there's a reason. There's clearly a heart and a vision, and it comes through 100%.
Yeah, I absolutely think so. This is I'm glad you liked it, because it's a one movie where it's like, as good as it is, it's like I don't really
Yeah.
know how to recommend it to people sometimes, because it is so like overbearing and perverted and disturbing and stuff like that. But I'm glad to see that like a lot of people seem to be resonating with it. So
Yeah, no, for sure.
it's the only 4-hour movie where it's like, it's daunting going in knowing it's 4 hours, but after you watch it, it's like, I could watch that again. At least for me, I don't know.
I watched this movie on an archive.org link, and all the comments said that exact same thing: is this movie does not feel like 4 hours.
Yeah.
It flies by, and it
Whereas
really did. I
Apollo
watched it.
Apollo 18 does feel like 4 hours, and this feels like 90
Yeah, it's like
minutes.
Apollo. They say that in space, time is dilated, and is you experience time differently, and maybe that's why it felt like 4 hours when we watch Apollo 18. And since Love Exposure takes place on Earth, maybe it's just it feels different.
Yeah, and it hits me
So
in the
it
feels
takes place
different.
on some sort of Earth.
Yeah,
Yeah, for
exactly.
real.
And there's so much like this movie even has to say about like the difference between cults and religions, and like how it's
Yeah,
like okay to like be religious and have that faith, which is what I agree with. But then there's like that point of no return where you get into like something like the Zero Church, and you know that's where it really goes off the rails and stuff like that. And I can't even like talk about like all these themes, and even like if this podcast was 3 hours long, 4 hours long, and we didn't even talk about Apollo 18 at all. I mean, yeah, it's like there's more density when you can say you can maybe talk more about the movie than the movie's runtime, and the movie's runtime is 4 hours long. I mean,
you're
like
dealing
that.
with a modern masterpiece.
Yeah, exactly. So like this is yeah, this is it's everything like, and it's I was gonna say this too is like it's kind of funny because I review a lot of Adult Swim shows on my channel, which are generally a lot of people consider to be kind of low rent and stuff like that. But I also like a lot of like really high art house movies and stuff like that. And Love Exposure and Sono, I kind of feel like it's the best kind of mix between the two. That where you really like, there's so much substance to it, and like there's so much. I guess I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but I guess B movie quality to it. There's so much rawness to it. There's so much you
Yeah,
know
exactly.
anti-establishment stuff to it. It's very yeah,
It's everything.
it's
It, it's
everything.
it's 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 the lowest scum on the ground, and it's the highest art in the Louvre. It's
Yeah,
it's it's everything at the same time.
yeah, exactly. It's everything. It's everything I would really want out of a movie, because it's like I don't care if you're highbrow or lowbrow. In fact, I kind of like those two extremes. I just kind of get bored of like the middle ground where it's trying to appeal to everybody. I
Yeah,
like, yeah, but it's like make your movie like the highest art movie that you can do, or make it like the schlockiest movie. That was the word I was looking for was schlock, but make it like the
yeah,
schlockiest experience that you can ever make. And Love Exposure understands I think a lot of people where they're coming from with that. And that's why I think part of the reason, beyond just the density of it and its themes and its characters, that's part of the reason it resonates so much with so many people, is because it really is kind of bridging the gaps of those two extremes, and then becoming its own thing as well. So yeah, do you have anything else to say about Love Exposure? I mean, I do, but just for the sake of this
yeah,
podcast, I guess.
yeah. For the sake of this podcast, I think that's I've said everything I need to say. Go watch this for real. You can watch it for free. If you know where to find it, I found it. You can watch it. Take
Yeah,
4 hours out of your day. If you don't have 4 hours, take 1 hour out of 4 days,
yeah.
if you need to. Just it's again, or wait till you're on your deathbed and watch this movie and realize that this is what all filmmaking or film watching has led up to. And it came out in 2008, and you missed it because it was in Japan.
Yeah, exactly. And it was like this one, I guess it really got like a lot of attention at festivals and stuff like that. And
Oh yeah,
yeah, that's I guess I think Suicide Club is what really put Sono on the map internationally. But like I said, that was kind of within the Japanese horror movie sphere of that. But this was kind of like his big break into, I think, more, I guess, critical attention just in general, its terms and stuff like that. Even though Noriko's Dinner Table, you could argue whether or not that's actually a horror movie, but it is connected to a horror movie, so I don't know.
yeah.
Anyway, and
Uh,
it's actually from watching the behind the scenes footage, like the scenes of Yu's house. Those are Sono's actual house, and
Oh my god.
he also used that for Noriko's dinner table and a few other movies I recognized it from. But yeah, it's very much it's a common, I guess, location, and like there's the behind the scenes footage, like it's okay, like it's if you really like Love Exposure, go check it out, but it's not really like that profound or anything. It's just kind of like, okay, this is kind of cool footage of the behind the scenes stuff. But yeah, I went above and beyond this
Yeah.
time because it's like I couldn't just watch 4 hours of Love Exposure. I had to watch another hour and a half of added footage and then behind the scenes stuff. So, but I guess I did. I went above and beyond this week because I also watched several endings of Apollo 18. So I give myself an A
Oh my
plus
god.
on my homework.
Yeah. Yeah. Jeez. I can't believe you gave me a 4-hour long movie on the first day that I started a brand new job. I literally watched this movie in between calls at my at my newest job. Oh,
Actually,
anyway.
last month I watched Edward Yang's A Brighter Summer's Day, which is another 4 hour movie. It's actually 237 minutes, so it's the exact same runtime as Love Exposure. But that's another
Oh
one
my
of my
god.
new favorites, and maybe I'll recommend that someday. So I don't know. If you're up for more 4 hour movies, I got more of them in my
Hey man.
arsenal.
Hey man, I talk a lot of shit, but that was a good fucking movie.
Yeah. Yeah. At least I'm not doing Satan Tango, which I don't know. We could
Oh my
recommend that
god.
one day. But
If we did
I'll never forget that fucking accordion song when they're in the party.
Yeah, I know.
I do
And
like
then come
Satan
back and tell
Tango.
us how it was. I do too, as long as you have the patience to sit through what was it, 8 hours?
Yeah. It was 7 hours, I believe.
Oh, still.
And
Was it
Satan Tango
seven
is
hours?
pretty
What was
high
another
up
one?
on. I think Satan Tango is only a few spots away in front of Love Exposure, but I would say that I prefer Love Exposure if I'm going for like a really long movie
Oh yeah.
experience. I mean, I need to see more Bellatar to see if those other movies are as good,
Yeah.
but I don't think any of them are 7 hours.
Yeah. I think it's pretty hard to make a 7-hour movie and release it.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard to make a 4 hour movie and release it, but I thank Edward Yang and Sion Sono because when they did it, they made masterpieces. And yeah, Sono is I like is I don't know. I guess there's not going to be any more new Sono movies since he's kind of blacklisted from Japanese Hollywood, at least not for a while. But his
But
last
but this movie will at least always be here.
yeah, exactly. His last movie was actually a Nick Cage movie. It was his first movie that was entirely English. Well, actually, it wasn't entirely English language, and he did have that movie Hazard, but that was kind of his first big budget Hollywood movie, which was Prisoners of the Ghostland.
Okay, I'm checking that out. Oh my! I think that's on Netflix, is it not?
Maybe I saw it in theaters when it came out.
Oh.
It's
Well,
not his best movie.
yeah,
He didn't write it, but there is definitely a lot of good stuff in there.
yeah, for sure.
Okay, so I think
All
that
right,
wraps up Love Exposure for now. I
for
don't know.
now.
I have a feeling I'm going to talk about
Watch
this on my channel again someday, but
Yeah, I'm sure that people would want to hear it because I think you could talk for double length of what we talked about already. So
yeah. And go check out a lot of Sono's other movies like Nariko's Dinner Table and Anti-Porno and Guilty of Romance and Cold Fish and yeah, all that good stuff.
all right.
Yeah.
Well, let's wrap this up. We won't want we don't want our podcast to be getting to 4 hours long. I
I think we're
kid.
just
I
under
kid.
2 at this moment, but yeah.
Yeah. Let's let's give our recommendations for next episode.
Okay.
Ian, let's start with you.
Okay, sure. Well, I don't know what the weather is like over there, but it's becoming warmer over here in British Columbia,
Yeah.
and I guess I'll experience what PEI is next month because we'll be doing it in person. But I decided, why not do a movie that reminds me of the summer, and that's all that I really had going for it. But yeah, it's a movie from 1968 starring Burt Lancaster, directed by Frank Perry, and that movie is called The Swimmer.
The Swimmer.
Yeah.
Okay, this is another movie I've never watched before, so I'm actually really excited.
Yeah. I assume you haven't even heard of it, if I were to guess, but
No, never heard of it.
yeah. It's one of those like movies where I don't know a whole lot of people who know about it, but I do want to get it out there to more people because I do like it a lot. But anyway, we'll talk about it next time.
Awesome.
So, what do you got for
Okay.
me?
All right. So, uh, well, I'm really looking forward because you're going to be coming to film this live with us, or I guess not film, record. So that'll be the first time since December. Hopefully, I won't mess up the audio this time. But I was thinking I'd go a little weird with it. Maybe something that isn't necessarily a film. I actually mentioned it when we were talking about Harakiri, a show that aired in the 70s. It's a mystery show, and it is called Columbo. Have you heard of Columbo at all? Do you know anything
I
about it?
I don't know anything about it. I've heard the name.
Okay. Yeah. So, Columbo is a detective show from the 1970s that was basically one of these shows that I believe it ran on NBC for the NBC mystery movie that would air every couple of weeks on NBC. And basically, each episode is a standalone mystery story with the only connecting thread being the main character of Detective Columbo, played by Peter Falk. And I really wanted to introduce you to this series with one of the best episodes that I've seen. So I'm choosing, for my recommendation, I'm choosing episode 4 of Columbo, Suitable for Framing, which was directed by Hy Averback and written by Jackson Gillis. So I think that I'm going to recommend that to you, and
Okay,
I'll have
suitable
you
for
watch that.
framing.
And
Okay.
yeah, that's my recommendation. We're going a little weird with it.
All right. Yeah, I might as well. I mean, I assume that there's a reason that you're recommending this, because it just seems like such an obscure reference. But yeah, okay.
Yeah, well, it's honestly the reason is that this is one of my favorite mystery stories I've ever seen. Started watching Columbo a couple of years back because it got really big on Tumblr, which I still have. I still have a Tumblr, and
I was gonna say, like, does anything get big on Tumblr anymore?
yeah,
I
no,
guess
like
Columbo does.
yeah, just weird stuff. So I kind of fell in love with the character and just started watching all these episodes. This episode has one of the best uh, presentations. And it's one of my favorite episodes of the whole series. So I'm really excited for you to check it out. And hopefully, if you like it, you'll check out a couple more. And hopefully, everyone listening will check out a couple of more.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm intrigued. So yeah, I'll put
Yeah,
it that way. Um, yeah. Okay. So if you don't want to be spoiled for the swimmer or the episode of Columbo suitable for framing, check those out by the time we release our next podcast. And
which will be next month,
yeah,
May, probably the 29th. It seems like we upload these on the 29th a whole lot. It just happens to be that way. We
yeah.
don't plan it like that.
If you'd
Yeah.
like to donate to our channel, there are links where you could do that in the video description. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you're watching this on Spotify, go over to YouTube and you can find those links. And, you can join our Patreon, you can join our PayPal, you can join us via channel memberships, you can send us super chats, you can do all that good stuff that they tell you to do YouTube on YouTube videos. I bet yeah, this is completely new information to all of you that you can do this stuff. It's not at the end of every single YouTube video ever. So
Yeah, it's really good for people who just woke up from a 20-year coma and don't know how YouTube works or the internet
yeah,
or
so
subscriptions.
we got to keep those people in mind. So we got to think about the
Yeah, you don't
audience.
want to exclude anyone.
Yeah,
Yeah, always think about the audience.
yeah. So yeah, and then you can also, if you don't want to donate to us, because why would you? You can comment, you can like, you can subscribe, you can share, you can send your
Yeah,
the links
anything
around. You
anything to
can,
get the word out.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Everybody's heard
because
about
we're
the bird. Well, the bird is the
the
word.
bird's a word.
Yeah.
we
Anywho,
we we're great guys, and I think you should force us into your friends' lives and make them listen to us, no matter how much they don't care.
indoctrinate
I
them
think
like the Zero Church.
exactly. I think
Yeah.
that we should start a cult.
Yeah, exactly. We need to start a
This is
cult.
this is gonna be this is gonna be Exhibit A in like some court case that's gonna be unfolding like 10 years from now.
Yeah, exactly. This is the turning point where it all just went downhill for us and we indoctrinated people into a cult. And then somebody
Oh, that
infiltrated the cult with a samurai sword and a bomb.
isn't that what every YouTuber wants?
Yes, I think so. I mean, if Andrew
Oh.
Tate is anything to go by. But anyway.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening. This has been Nathan with the Unrealistic Elephant Podcast.
And I'm been Ian with Nathan on the
With the
Unrealistic
Unrealistic
Elephant
Elephant.
First.
We were gonna figure out a way to end this, but that sounds good eventually, and it's gonna be awesome.
I
So
just
maybe
like
that's
figured out the intros basically, so I still need to go to the outros and think about that.
yeah.
Maybe I should end the
We'll
outros with
work
a
on it.
Simpsons quote too.
Yeah. Think of a Simpsons quote. Say it. Just think of the first Simpsons quote that comes to your mind.
Uh, donuts. Is there anything they can't do?
Thank you so much for listening. Have a good night.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.